Okay, hello everyone. I'm Gina. If you don't know me, I'm the designer for Pipeline Insights and Runner. And today I'll be talking about build artifacts. The title is fancier than what it really is going to be about. It's really just explaining what build artifacts are, how they're implemented in our product today, and what we're doing with them. So when we started this project, build artifacts was a new category to Pipeline Insights, and which used to be the testing team. And I didn't really know what they were. So I figured it would be good to start with just a general definition. They are files produced by a build, and that can include packages, dependencies, reports, log files, source code, and so on. But at GitLab, we usually categorize them as either job artifacts or pipeline artifacts. And so the job artifacts are the ones that you probably have seen if you've been checking out artifacts for pipelines. They are archive of files and directories that are outputs of jobs. So if you view like details of a job on the right sidebar, you'll see the ability to keep, download, or browse them. And then if you look at the pipeline list view today, you can drop down the menu to download artifacts, and that's what this screenshot on the right is. But then there's also pipeline artifacts. They're different than job artifacts because they're created by the pipeline after it finishes, and they're not explicitly managed by the CI/YAML definitions. And they're specifically for the test coverage visualization feature that we have. That's also a feature that the Pipeline Insights team owns, but you would have to use certain keywords to be able to generate that report and then figure out how much of your code is covered by tests. So to begin like this whole project, we realized we didn't have a ton of research around artifacts. So I went back into Dovetail and just tried to capture everything that we've done so far. And then this also includes some of the research that I recently did, which I'll be talking about in a couple minutes. But I did want to just tell you about the themes that bubbled up from what we've heard so far. We heard that artifacts are difficult to trace. So the quotes are either from customers or like insights from previous research sessions here. But figuring out the default place where artifacts are generated is not clear to users, and it often creates a lot of confusion. And then it's not easy to trace an artifact back today, whether it's tracing it back for a given release so that you have a list of audited artifacts, tracing it back to a commit or a pipeline where it came from. It's not easy to do that. And then there are times that developers would love to see what changed over time with artifacts across a pipeline, because that would help them debug if something went wrong. And there's no way to be able to do that today either. Another theme that bubbled up was that they're difficult to manage. This actually came up a lot with self-managed users, because on SaaS, we automatically delete your artifacts after a certain amount of time. But if you're self-managed, you have to create your own like system to be able to do that. And artifacts do take up storage. So then it ends up getting a little tricky there. So a few quotes that came out were that teams are working around regularly cleaning up a few hundred gigs of artifacts from old pipelines. Sometimes they delete things that somebody's looking for, and then they have to go back and run a new pipeline to be able to recreate that artifact. And then there's other times that they're trying to figure out which artifacts to delete, but they don't have enough information to be able to properly make the decision. So that was just a few things of what we heard in the beginning. And a year ago, we had created this artifacts page for a project that lists all of the artifacts, job and pipeline artifacts within that project in one place. This is actually still behind a feature flag. And the reason why I even came about this was because we had a issue to add more information to this page. And when we came back as a team, the developers and myself got together, and we found that there was a lot of problems with this page in general. We were repeating the same job over and over again, even though it's just different artifacts from that job. And for a project, you could have like 100 artifacts for a single job. So seems pretty, it would get out of control at that point. There's also no way that you can delete artifacts from this, which is a huge thing that people need to do to manage storage. And we found some other things that were just popping up from that were performance related. So since then, we have gone back and made some changes or proposed some changes that we then wanted to validate with customers to see if it was really solving the problems. So this is kind of what we came up with. We split out job artifacts from pipeline artifacts. We're still emphasizing the size of the artifacts that you have so that you know how much that's attributing to your storage. And then for each job now, it's one row for that job. And then if you expand it, you'll see all of the artifacts that were included. We're also giving more of like an overview of how many artifacts were in that job. So you can see like 120 artifacts, the amount of storage that they take up. And then you can trace back to the pipeline ID, the commit message, the branch, the SHA, and so on, and similar things for the pipeline artifacts as well. So once we were at this point, we wanted to know if it really solves the problems. And spoiler alert, it does, but I did want to just show you some of the insights that came out of the sessions in Dovetail. So we split the insights up into things that were more about like the jobs that were being done with artifacts and the UI feedback. And just for sake of time, I'm going to skip all of the job ones and just focus on the UI stuff. So one of the things that came up is every single developer, we talked to 6 of them. Every one of them said that they want to see file extensions. That's the first thing that they do when they get onto a new operating system, they turn on file extensions. And they're really necessary to provide context of what the artifact is that's listed. So we were providing types, the file types, like if it's an archive, which would mean it's usually like a zip file. But we weren't including the .zip or whatever it happens to be. So we're gonna do that. And then another thing that came up was if an artifact is expired, you can't do anything with it. And developers just didn't want to see them unless they impacted a job or pipeline. Some jobs are dependent on artifacts from a previous job. If that previous job's artifact expires, then that job that's dependent on it won't run properly. There's no way that you can see if that artifact expired from that previous job though. So in that case, they would want to see those expired artifacts. And the last one I'll look at is pipeline metadata. So we did confirm that pipeline metadata is crucial to determining where an artifact came from, but within the designs, the pipeline ID wasn't clear enough. And they were often asking like, oh, where's the pipeline ID? And I think that might have to do with the fact that we're using so many icons to identify like which part of the metadata this is. So we'll have to improve that as well. And just if you want to check out the other insights, by the way, just feel free to go into Dovetail. But for the next steps for this project, we're going to make edits based on the feedback there and then create some actionable insights, issues to be able to like fix some of the other things that we heard as well. And that's it. Thank you.